Sarah Martinez pushed her small cart across the campus walkway. The wheels made a soft, rolling sound on the concrete path. Inside the cart was her most precious thing, a small electric keyboard that she had saved money for 2 years to buy. It was not the best keyboard in the world, but it was hers. Every Tuesday and Thursday morning, she made this same trip to the main plaza of Westfield University. The morning air was cool and fresh. Sarah could hear birds singing in the tall oak trees that lined the campus paths. Students walked past her, some carrying coffee cups, others with heavy backpacks full of books. Most of them looked tired because it was still early in the morning. Sarah liked this time of day. The campus was peaceful, and there was something special about the way the sunlight fell on the old brick buildings. Sarah was 22 years old and studying music therapy at the university. She had always loved music. When she was a little girl, her grandmother taught her to play piano on an old upright piano in their small apartment. Sarah remembered sitting on a stack of phone books because she was too short to reach the keys properly. Her grandmother would guide her small fingers to the right notes and tell her that music could heal people's hearts. Now Sarah was learning how to use music to help others in a professional way. Music therapy was not easy to study. She had to learn about psychology, medicine, and of course many different types of music. The classes were interesting but expensive. Even with financial aid, Sarah struggled to pay for her textbooks and school supplies. That was why she started playing music in the campus plaza. The plaza was a large, open area in the center of the campus. It had stone benches around the edges and a big fountain in the middle. Students liked to sit there between classes, eat lunch, or study outside when the weather was nice. Sarah had noticed that many students seemed stressed and tired as they hurried to their classes. She thought that maybe some music might make their day a little better. 3 months ago, Sarah had asked the campus security office if she could play music in the plaza. The security guard, a kind older man named Mr. Johnson, had looked through some papers and told her that street performances were allowed in public areas of the campus as long as they did not block walkways or disturb classes. He had even helped her find the best spot, near the fountain but far enough away from the library windows so the music would not bother students who were studying inside. Sarah set up her keyboard on a small folding table. She placed an old guitar case on the ground in front of her, even though she did not play guitar. The case was for people to put money in if they liked her music. She did not expect much money, but every little bit helped. Sometimes she made enough to buy a sandwich for lunch or put a few dollars toward her next textbook. She plugged her keyboard into a small battery-powered speaker. The whole setup was simple, but it worked well. Sarah had practiced many songs that she thought college students would enjoy. She played classical pieces like Bach and Mozart, but she also played popular songs from the radio and movie soundtracks that people might recognize. On her first day of playing, Sarah had been very nervous. Her hands shook a little as she played, and she kept looking around to see if anyone was listening. Only a few people stopped, and she made just $3.50. But as the weeks went by, more and more students began to notice her music. They would slow down as they walked past, and some would stop for a whole song. Sarah learned the names of some of her regular listeners. There was Jake, a business student who always stopped to listen when she played jazz music. Maria, who studied art, liked it when Sarah played Spanish guitar pieces. Professor Thompson from the English department walked by every Tuesday at exactly 9:15 and always smiled and waved when he heard her playing. The best part for Sarah was seeing how the music affected people. She watched students' faces change when they heard a song they loved. Some would close their eyes and just listen for a moment, letting the stress of their busy day melt away. Others would smile or even start humming along. A few students had told her that her music helped them feel less homesick or less worried about their exams. Sarah always dressed nicely when she played. She wore simple clothes like jeans and a sweater, nothing fancy, but she wanted to look respectful. She knew that she was representing not just herself but also the university. She made sure to keep her area clean and never left any trash behind. When she finished playing, she always packed up quickly and quietly. The money she earned was small but helpful. On a good day, she might make $15 or $20. On quiet days, maybe just $5 or $6. She kept track of every penny, because she needed to be careful with money. Sarah worked part-time at the campus bookstore in the afternoons, but that job did not pay very much either. Her parents helped when they could, but they had their own bills to pay. Sarah's favorite songs to play were the ones that seemed to touch people the most. She had learned that certain songs could change the whole mood of the plaza. When she played something soft and peaceful, people would slow down and seem more relaxed. When she played something cheerful and upbeat, she could see students walking with more energy in their steps. One of her most popular songs was The Sound of Silence by Simon and Garfunkel. She had arranged it for keyboard in a way that was both beautiful and sad. Whenever she played it, a small crowd would gather. People seemed to connect with the meaningful words and the gentle melody. Another favorite was Imagine by John Lennon. Students would sometimes sing along quietly when she played that one. Sarah also enjoyed playing pieces from movies and TV shows that students might know. Songs from popular films always got attention. She could play the theme from The Lion King or music from Star Wars and watch people's faces light up with recognition and happy memories. The campus security guards had become friendly with Sarah over the months. Mr. Johnson would sometimes stop by to chat during his rounds. He told her that several professors had mentioned to him how much they enjoyed hearing music in the plaza. Even the cleaning staff knew her. Mrs. Garcia, who cleaned the administration building, would wave to her every morning and had once brought her a cup of hot coffee on a cold day. Sarah felt like she had found her place at the university. She was not just a student sitting in classes anymore. She was contributing something positive to the campus community. Her music was making people's days a little brighter, and that felt good. She looked forward to her Tuesday and Thursday morning performances. It was her way of sharing the gift that her grandmother had given her all those years ago, the belief that music could heal people's hearts. Dean Patricia Whitmore stepped out of the administration building at exactly 8:30 in the morning. She always arrived at work early because she believed that successful people started their day before everyone else. Patricia had been the Dean of Student Affairs at Westfield University for 5 years. She was a woman who liked rules, order, and proper behavior. Her office walls were covered with certificates and awards, and her desk was always perfectly organized. Patricia wore a black business suit as she did every day. Her hair was pulled back in a tight bun, and her shoes made sharp clicking sounds on the pavement as she walked. She carried a leather briefcase in one hand and her phone in the other. She was checking her morning emails when she heard something. That made her stop walking. Music was coming from somewhere nearby. Piano music. Patricia looked around with a confused expression on her face. There was not supposed to be any music playing on campus at this time of day. The music building was on the other side of campus and classes had not started yet. Where was this sound coming from? Patricia followed the sound with quick, determined steps. Her heels clicked faster now as she walked toward the main plaza. As she got closer, The music became clearer. Someone was playing what sounded like a popular song, something she had heard on the radio. This was definitely not appropriate music for a university campus, she thought. When Patricia reached the plaza, she saw exactly what she had feared. A young woman was sitting at a small keyboard, playing music for a gathering crowd of students. There was an open guitar case on the ground with money in it. Patricia felt her face get hot with anger. This was clearly a street performance, and someone was making money on university property without permission. Patricia had very strong opinions about what was appropriate for a university campus. She believed that universities should be serious, places of learning, not entertainment venues. Street performers belonged on city sidewalks, not in the middle of an academic institution. This kind of activity made the university look unprofessional and cheap. Sarah was in the middle of playing Yesterday by the Beatles when she noticed a woman in a black suit walking directly toward her. The woman's face looked angry and she was moving with purpose. Sarah continued playing, but she felt a nervous feeling in her stomach. She had never seen this woman before, but something about her appearance suggested that she was someone important at the university. Patricia walked right up to Sarah's keyboard setup and stood there with her arms crossed. Several students who had been listening to the music noticed the tension and stopped to watch what would happen. Patricia waited for Sarah to finish the song, tapping her foot impatiently on the ground. When Sarah finished playing, she looked up at the woman with a polite smile. "Good morning," Sarah said in a friendly voice. She was always polite to people who stopped to listen to her music, even when they looked unfriendly. "You need to stop this immediately," Patricia said in a loud, sharp voice. She did not introduce herself or say good morning back to Sarah. "You are conducting unauthorized commercial activity on university property, and this needs to end right now." Sarah felt confused. "I'm sorry, I don't understand," she said. "I checked with campus security, and they said I could play music here as long as I didn't block walkways or disturb classes. I'm a student here. My name is Sarah Martinez." Patricia's eyes became even more angry when Sarah questioned her authority. "I don't care what security told you," she said, her voice getting louder. "I am Dean Patricia Whitmore, and I am telling you that this street performance is not allowed. This is a university, not a circus." More students had gathered around to watch the confrontation. Some of them recognized Sarah as the friendly piano player who had been brightening their mornings for months. They could see that she looked upset and confused. A few students started whispering to each other about what was happening. "I understand your concern," Sarah said, trying to stay calm. "But I was told that this area is considered public space on campus, and street performances are allowed as long as they follow the guidelines. I always clean up after myself, and I've never had any complaints." Patricia felt even more angry when Sarah continued to argue with her. In Patricia's mind, students should always obey authority figures without question. The fact that this young woman was politely disagreeing with her felt like disrespect. "You are collecting money," Patricia said, pointing at the guitar case. "That makes this a commercial activity, which is strictly prohibited. I don't care what guidelines you think you're following. I am ordering you to pack up your equipment and leave this area immediately." Sarah looked down at the guitar case. There were a few dollar bills and some coins inside, maybe $8 or $9 total. It was hardly a large commercial operation. "The money is just voluntary donations," she explained. "People give it if they want to. I'm not charging anyone or forcing anyone to pay." "Voluntary donations are still commercial activity," Patricia said. Her voice was now loud enough that people across the plaza could hear her. "You are essentially begging for money, and that is not appropriate behavior for a student at this university. This kind of street performance is beneath our academic standards." The word begging hit Sarah like a slap in the face. She had never thought of her music as begging. She was sharing something beautiful with people, and they chose to show their appreciation with small donations. It was not different from musicians who played in coffee shops or restaurants. "I'm not begging," Sarah said, and for the first time her voice showed some emotion. "I'm sharing music with people. Music therapy is my major, and this is part of how I practice connecting with people through music." "I don't care what your major is," Patricia snapped. "You are disrupting the academic atmosphere of this campus with your noise. Students come here to learn, not to be entertained by street performers." Jake, the business student who often stopped to listen to Sarah's jazz music, stepped forward from the crowd. "Excuse me," he said to Patricia. "Sarah's music doesn't disrupt anything. She actually makes the campus a better place. A lot of us really look forward to hearing her play." Patricia turned her sharp gaze on Jake. "Students should be focused on getting to class on time, not stopping to listen to entertainment," she said coldly. "This kind of distraction is exactly what I'm talking about." More students began to speak up. "She's not bothering anyone," said a young woman with a backpack. "Her music is beautiful, and it makes the morning less stressful." "Yeah, why is this a problem?" asked another student. "She's been playing here for months, and everyone loves it." Patricia felt like the situation was getting out of control. She was not used to students questioning her decisions, and she certainly was not used to having her authority challenged in public. Her face became red, and her voice grew even sharper. "This discussion is over," Patricia announced loudly. "I am calling campus security to escort this young woman off the premises. If she refuses to leave voluntarily, she will face disciplinary action that could affect her enrollment at this university." Patricia pulled out her phone and began dialing campus security. Sarah felt her heart beating fast. She had never been in trouble at school before, and the thought of facing disciplinary action scared her. But she also felt angry about being called a beggar and being told that her music was just noise. The students around them looked shocked. They could not believe that someone was calling security on Sarah, who had never caused any problems. Some of them started taking out their phones, not sure what they should do, but feeling like they should document what was happening. Sarah looked at her keyboard, then at the students who had gathered around her, and then back at Dean Whitmore, who was speaking angrily into her phone. In that moment, Sarah had to make a decision that would change everything. Sarah stared at Dean Whitmore as the woman spoke harshly into her phone, calling for campus security. The crowd of students around them had grown larger, and Sarah could feel dozens of eyes watching her. Her heart was beating so fast that she could hear it in her ears. For a moment, she felt like a small child being scolded by a stern teacher. But then something changed inside Sarah. She thought about her grandmother, who had taught her that music was a gift meant to be shared. She thought about all the students who had smiled when they heard her play, who had told her that her music helped them feel less stressed or less lonely. She thought about Jake and Maria and Professor Thompson and all the other people who had become part of her morning routine. Most importantly, Sarah thought about why she had started studying music therapy in the first place. She wanted to help people heal through music. She wanted to bring joy and comfort to others through the gift her grandmother had given her. And right now, Dean Whitmore was trying to tell her that this gift was worthless, that it was nothing more than begging and noise. Sarah looked around at the faces of the students who were watching. She could see support in their eyes, but she could also see fear. They were afraid of getting in trouble with the dean, just like she was. But Sarah realized that sometimes, when something important is at stake, a person has to take a stand. Instead of packing up her keyboard like Dean Whitmore had ordered, Sarah did something that surprised everyone, including herself. She sat back, down on her small folding chair, and placed her hands on the keyboard keys. "What do you think you're doing?" Dean Whitmore demanded, ending her phone call abruptly. "I told you to pack up your equipment and leave immediately." Sarah looked up at the dean with calm, steady eyes. "I'm going to play one more song," she said quietly. Her voice was not loud, but somehow everyone in the plaza could hear her clearly. "You will do no such thing," Dean Whitmore said, her voice rising to almost a shout. "Campus security is on their way, and if you don't comply with my orders, you will face serious consequences." Sarah took a deep breath and let her fingers find the keys. She began to play a song that she had never performed in public before. It was an original composition that she had written over the past few months, during the quiet hours late at night when she was thinking about her future and her dreams. The song was called "Stand Your Ground," though she had never told anyone that title. She had written it during a difficult time when she was struggling to pay for school and wondering if she was strong enough to achieve her goals. The melody was both sad and hopeful, like a conversation between despair and determination. As the first notes filled the air, something magical happened in the plaza. The students who had been whispering and murmuring became completely silent. Even Dean Whitmore stopped talking for a moment, caught off guard by the beautiful, haunting sound that was coming from Sarah's small keyboard. The song began slowly and softly, like a gentle rainfall. Sarah's fingers moved across the keys with incredible grace and emotion. She was no longer thinking about the dean or the threat of disciplinary action. She was completely focused on the music, pouring all of her feelings into every note. The melody spoke of struggle and hardship, but also of hope and perseverance. It was the sound of someone who had faced difficulties but refused to give up. As Sarah played, she thought about all the challenges she had overcome to get to this university, all the sacrifices her family had made to help her pursue her education, and all the dreams she still hoped to achieve. Dean Whitmore stood frozen, not sure what to do. She had expected Sarah to obey her orders immediately, as students usually did when faced with authority. The fact that Sarah was openly defying her in front of so many witnesses made her feel both angry and uncertain. She wanted to physically stop Sarah from playing, but something about the music made her hesitate. The students around the plaza were completely mesmerized. Many of them had heard Sarah play before, but this was different. This was not just entertainment or background music. This was Sarah's heart and soul expressed through her keyboard. Some students had tears in their eyes as they listened to the powerful melody. Jake, the business student, stepped closer to Sarah's keyboard. He could see that she was taking a big risk by defying the dean, and he wanted to show his support. "Keep playing, Sarah," he said quietly. "This is beautiful." Other students began to move closer as well. They formed a loose circle around Sarah and her keyboard, not blocking anyone's path, but clearly showing that they were standing with her. Maria, the art student, wiped away a tear as she listened to the emotional music. As the song continued, it began to build in intensity. The melody became stronger and more confident, like someone finding their inner strength. Sarah's playing became more passionate, her whole body moving with the rhythm of the music. She was no longer just playing notes on a keyboard. She was telling a story of courage and determination. Professor Thompson, the English teacher who walked by every Tuesday, appeared at the edge of the crowd. He had heard the music from across the campus and had come to see what was happening. When he saw the confrontation between Sarah and Dean Whitmore, he understood immediately what was taking place. Professor Thompson pushed through the crowd of students until he was standing right beside Sarah's keyboard. He was a tall, thin man, with gray hair and kind eyes. He had been teaching at the university for over 20 years, and he had seen many conflicts between administration and students. But he had never seen anything quite like this. "This young woman has been bringing joy to our campus for months," Professor Thompson said loudly, addressing Dean Whitmore directly. "Her music has made this place more beautiful and more human. If you have a problem with that, then you have a problem with everything that makes education meaningful." Dean Whitmore felt her authority being challenged not just by a student now, but by a respected faculty member. "Professor Thompson, this is not your concern," she said, but her voice sounded less confident than before. "Actually, it is my concern," Professor Thompson replied. "Anything that affects the well-being and morale of our students is my concern. And right now, you are trying to silence something beautiful for no good reason." More faculty members began to appear in the plaza. Word was spreading quickly across campus that something important was happening. Dr. James Chen from the music department arrived and immediately recognized the quality of Sarah's playing. Dr. Lisa Rodriguez from the psychology department came to see what the commotion was about. As Sarah's song reached its climax, the melody became triumphant and strong. It was the sound of someone who had found their voice and was refusing to be silenced. The music seemed to fill not just the plaza, but the entire campus, echoing off the brick buildings and reaching into classrooms and offices. Students throughout the plaza had stopped whatever they were doing to listen. Some were recording with their phones, but most were simply experiencing the powerful moment that was unfolding before them. They could feel that this was about more than just one student's right to play music. This was about standing up for what is right and beautiful, in the face of unnecessary authority. Sarah's fingers flew across the keys with incredible skill and emotion. The song was telling the story of her grandmother, who had taught her that music could heal people's hearts. It was telling the story of all the students who had found comfort in her morning performances. It was telling the story of anyone who had ever been told that their gift was not valuable or important. As the song built toward its conclusion, Sarah felt a sense of peace and strength that she had never experienced before. She knew that she might face consequences for her defiance, but she also knew that she was doing the right thing. She was standing up for music, for beauty, for the right of students to find joy and comfort in their daily lives. The final notes of Sarah's composition rang out across the plaza like a declaration of independence. When the last sound faded away, there was a moment of complete silence. Then, as if controlled by a single mind, the entire crowd burst into applause. The applause that erupted in the plaza was unlike anything anyone had ever heard on the Westfield University campus. It started as a few scattered claps from the students closest to Sarah, but within seconds, it had grown into thunderous appreciation that seemed to shake the very ground beneath their feet. Students were not just clapping their hands, they were cheering, whistling, and calling out words of encouragement to Sarah. "That was incredible," shouted a young man with a baseball cap. "Sarah, you're amazing," called out a group of students from the dormitories. "Don't let them stop you from playing," yelled Maria, the art student, with tears still streaming down her cheeks. Sarah sat at her keyboard, breathing heavily from the emotional intensity of her performance. Her hands were still trembling slightly from the adrenaline, and she could hardly believe what had just happened. She had never played with such passion and power before. It was as if something deep inside her had awakened and demanded to be heard. Dean Whitmore stood in the middle of the celebrating crowd, looking completely shocked and confused. She had expected her authority to end this situation quickly and quietly. Instead, she found herself surrounded by hundreds of cheering students and faculty members who were clearly supporting the young woman she had tried to silence. The dean's face had turned red, and she clutched her phone tightly, not sure what to do next. Professor Thompson stepped forward and began clapping even louder. His distinguished gray hair caught the morning sunlight as he smiled proudly at Sarah. "That was one of the most beautiful pieces of music I have ever heard on this campus," he announced in his clear professor voice. "This young woman has just demonstrated exactly why the arts are essential to education and to life itself." Dr. James Chen from the music department pushed through the crowd with excitement in his eyes. He was a small, energetic man who had been teaching music for 15 years, and he knew exceptional talent when he heard it. "Sarah," he called out as he approached her keyboard, "that composition was extraordinary. The emotional depth, the technical skill, the way you used harmony to tell a story, that was graduate-level work." Sarah looked up at Dr. Chen with surprise. She had seen him around campus, but had never spoken to him before. "Thank you, Professor," she said quietly, still trying to catch her breath. Dr. Chen turned to address the crowd, his voice carrying clearly across the plaza. "I want everyone here to understand what they just witnessed," he said. "This was not just a street performance. This was a young artist sharing her soul through music, which is exactly what we try to teach in our classrooms every day. The fact that anyone would try to stop this kind of beautiful expression is deeply troubling to me as an educator." More faculty members were arriving in the plaza as word spread across campus. Dr. Lisa Rodriguez from the psychology department had heard the music from her office window and had come to investigate. When she saw the crowd and learned what was happening, she immediately understood the significance of the moment. "Music therapy is one of the most important fields in psychology," Dr. Rodriguez said loudly, supporting Dr. Chen's comments. "What Sarah is doing here, using music to connect with people and bring them comfort, this is exactly the kind of real-world practice that makes education meaningful. She should be celebrated, not punished." The students in the plaza were becoming more organized in their support. Jake, the business student, had started a chant, "Let Sarah play, let Sarah play." The chant was picked up by dozens of other students, and soon the entire plaza was filled with the rhythmic call for Sarah's right to continue her performances. Dean Whitmore felt the situation spiraling completely out of her control. She had dealt with student protests before, but this felt different. This was not angry rebellion. This was passionate support for something beautiful. The faculty members who were speaking up were not troublemakers or radicals. They were respected professors who had been at the university for many years. Campus security finally arrived, led by Mr. Johnson, the kind security guard who had originally given Sarah permission to play in the plaza. When Mr. Johnson saw the massive crowd and heard the chanting, he looked confused and concerned. He approached Dean Whitmore carefully. "Ma'am, you called about a disturbance?" Mr. Johnson asked, looking around at the crowd of peacefully assembled students and faculty. "This student has been conducting unauthorized commercial activity," Dean Whitmore said, pointing at Sarah. "I ordered her to stop and she refused to comply. I want her removed from campus property immediately." Mr. Johnson looked at Sarah, whom he recognized and had spoken with many times over the past few months. He scratched his head thoughtfully. "Ma'am, with respect, I was the one who told Sarah she could play music here. The campus guidelines clearly allow street performances in public areas as long as they don't interfere with foot traffic or create safety hazards. I don't see any safety issues here." Dean Whitmore's eyes flashed with anger. "Are you questioning my authority, Mr. Johnson?" "No, ma'am," Mr. Johnson replied calmly. "I'm just following the established campus policies. If you want to change those policies, that would need to go through the proper channels and committees." "Professor." Thompson stepped forward to support Mr. Johnson. "The security officer is absolutely correct," he said. "Dean Whitmore, you may not like Sarah's music, but that doesn't give you the right to override established university policies. This young woman has done nothing wrong." The crowd of students began to surge closer, not in a threatening way, but in a protective way. They seemed to instinctively understand that they needed to create a barrier between Sarah and anyone who might try to stop her from playing. Students locked arms and formed a human circle around Sarah's keyboard setup. Dr. Chen placed his hand gently on Sarah's shoulder. "Sarah, would you be willing to play another song?" he asked. "I think everyone here would love to hear more of your music." Sarah looked around at the faces surrounding her. She saw support, encouragement, and genuine love for music. She saw fellow students who had been touched by her performances over the past months. She saw professors who understood the value of what she was doing. Most importantly, she saw people who believed that beauty and art should not be silenced. "I would be honored to play another song," Sarah said, her voice stronger and more confident than before. As Sarah placed her hands back on the keyboard, even more people began to gather in the plaza. Students were texting their friends, professors were calling colleagues, and staff members were leaving their offices to see what was happening. The word was spreading that something special was taking place, something that went beyond a simple disagreement about campus policies. Sarah began to play Imagine by John Lennon, but she played it in her own style, with her own interpretation. As the familiar melody filled the air, something magical happened. Students began to sing along, softly at first, then with growing confidence and volume. "Imagine all the people living life in peace," the crowd sang together, their voices creating a harmony that no professional choir could have matched. The sound was beautiful and powerful, the voices of hundreds of young people united in song. Dean Whitmore stood at the edge of the crowd, watching in amazement as the entire plaza transformed into an impromptu concert. Students who had never spoken to each other were singing together. Faculty members who usually maintained professional distance were smiling and clapping with their students. Staff members who normally worked behind the scenes were standing openly in support of a student they barely knew. Even some of the campus security officers who had arrived with Mr. Johnson were tapping their feet to the music. One young security guard was quietly singing along with the students. The whole scene was unlike anything anyone had ever witnessed at the university. As the song continued, people throughout the campus began to hear the music and the singing. Students looked out of classroom windows and saw the massive gathering in the plaza. Some professors stopped their lectures and told their classes to go outside and see what was happening. The plaza was no longer just a place for students to walk through on their way to class. It had become the heart of something much larger, a community coming together to support beauty, creativity, and the right of individuals to share their gifts with others. Within 1 hour of Sarah's defiant performance, the first video appeared on social media. Jake, the business student, had recorded Sarah's original composition on his phone, and he posted it with the caption, "This is what happens when someone tries to silence beautiful music at our university. Sarah Martinez is a hero." The video was shaky, and the sound quality was not perfect, but it captured the raw emotion of the moment and the power of Sarah's music. The video spread faster than anyone could have imagined. Students at Westfield University shared it with their friends at other schools. Alumni who saw it shared it with their families and co-workers. People who had never heard of Westfield University were watching Sarah's performance and feeling moved by her courage and her music. By lunchtime, the hashtag #DockerLetSarahPlay was trending on Twitter. People from all over the country were sharing the video and adding their own comments about the importance of supporting young artists and standing up to unfair authority. Musicians, teachers, students, and music lovers everywhere were rallying behind Sarah's story. Sarah had no idea about the social media explosion that was happening around her. After the plaza gathering had ended and the crowd had dispersed, she had quietly packed up her keyboard and gone to her afternoon classes as usual. She felt emotionally drained, but also strangely peaceful. She had stood up for something she believed in, and regardless of what happened next, she knew she had done the right thing. But while Sarah was sitting in her music therapy class, trying to focus on her professor's lecture about the psychological effects of rhythm on human emotions, the world outside was changing rapidly. The university's main phone lines were being flooded with calls from reporters, alumni, and concerned citizens who had seen the video and wanted to know more about what had happened. The university's social media accounts were receiving hundreds of messages every hour. Most of them were supportive of Sarah, but they were also critical of how the administration had handled the situation. Alumni were threatening to stop donating money to the university. Prospective students were questioning whether Westfield was the kind of place where creativity and individual expression were valued. Dr. Robert Hayes, the university president, was in his office trying to understand how a simple campus incident had become a national news story. His secretary handed him printouts of social media posts, news articles, and email messages that were pouring in about the situation. Dr. Hayes was a reasonable man who had been president of Westfield University for 8 years. He prided himself on running an institution that balanced academic excellence with student well-being. As Dr. Hayes read through the messages and watched the video of Sarah's performance, he began to realize that this was not just a story about campus policies or student behavior. This was a story about the soul of his university. The way the administration handled this situation would define how people thought about Westfield University for years to come. At 3 o'clock that afternoon, Dr. Hayes called an emergency meeting with his senior staff, including Dean Whitmore. The meeting was tense and difficult. Dean Whitmore tried to defend her actions by citing campus policies and the need to maintain order, but Dr. Hayes could see that the situation had grown far beyond campus policies. "Patricia," Dr. Hayes said calmly, "I need you to help me understand why you felt it was necessary to stop a music student from playing piano in our campus plaza." Dean Whitmore shifted uncomfortably in her chair. "The student was conducting commercial activity without proper authorization," she said. "She was collecting money, which violates our guidelines about commercial enterprises on campus property." "But according to Mr. Johnson's report," Dr. Hayes replied, "street performances are explicitly allowed in public areas of the campus, and the amount of money involved was minimal, less than $10. Don't you think your response was somewhat disproportionate to the actual problem?" Dean Whitmore felt defensive. "It's not about the amount of money," she said. "It's about maintaining standards and ensuring that our campus maintains its dignity as an academic institution. Dr. Hayes looked at his tablet, which showed the video of Sarah's performance. Patricia, have you actually watched this video? Have you listened to this young woman's music? Dean Whitmore had not watched the video. She had been too embarrassed and angry about the way the situation had unfolded. I don't need to watch a video to know that street performances are not appropriate for a university campus, she said stubbornly. Dr. Hayes turned his tablet around so that Dean Whitmore could see the screen. I think you should watch this, he said quietly. And I think you should listen carefully to what happened when you tried to silence this student. Reluctantly, Dean Whitmore watched the video of Sarah's performance. She saw the emotion on Sarah's face as she played, heard the beautiful and complex music that came from her keyboard, and witnessed the powerful reaction from the students and faculty who had gathered to support her. For the first time, Dean Whitmore began to understand that she had not just confronted a rule-breaking student, she had tried to silence an artist. Meanwhile, television news stations were picking up the story. A reporter from the local news had come to campus to interview students about what had happened. The interviews were overwhelmingly supportive of Sarah. Students talked about how her music had brightened their mornings and helped them feel less stressed about their studies. Sarah's music was like a gift, said Maria, the art student. Every Tuesday and Thursday, I would look forward to walking through the plaza because I knew I would hear something beautiful. It made the whole campus feel more alive and more human. Professor Thompson was interviewed as well. What happened today was not about campus policies, he said. It was about whether we value beauty and creativity or whether we let bureaucracy and rigid thinking destroy the things that make education meaningful. By evening, the story had reached national news outlets. Major newspapers were writing articles about the incident, framing it as a story about the tension between institutional authority and individual expression. Music blogs were sharing Sarah's composition and praising her talent. Educational websites were discussing the importance of supporting student creativity. The next morning, Dr. Hayes made a decision that would change everything. He called Sarah's dormitory room at 7 o'clock in the morning. Sarah was getting ready for her first class when her phone rang. Hello, Sarah. This is Dr. Robert Hayes, the president of the university. I was wondering if you would be available to meet with me this morning. Sarah felt her heart stop for a moment. The university president wanted to meet with her. She was sure that she was about to be expelled or face serious disciplinary action. Yes, sir, she said quietly. I can meet with you whenever you would like. Would 9 o'clock work for you? I'll have my secretary arrange for you to come to my office. When Sarah arrived at the president's office, she was surprised to find Dr. Chen and Professor Thompson waiting there as well. Dr. Hayes was a tall, friendly man with a warm smile. He did not look angry or stern, which confused Sarah because she had expected to be in serious trouble. Sarah, Dr. Hayes said, standing up to shake her hand, I want to personally apologize for what happened to you yesterday. Dean Whitmore's actions were not representative of this university's values, and I want to make sure that something like this never happens again. Sarah stared at him in shock. You're apologizing to me? She asked. Yes, I am, Dr. Hayes said. I've watched the video of your performance, and I've spent the last 18 hours reading messages from people all over the country who were moved by your music and your courage. You have shown this university what it means to stand up for something beautiful and important. Dr. Hayes walked over to his window, which looked out over the campus plaza where everything had happened. Sarah, I have a proposition for you. Our graduation ceremony is in 6 weeks, and we would be honored if you would perform your original composition for our graduating students and their families. We want to show the world that Westfield University supports and celebrates student creativity. Sarah felt tears coming to her eyes. You want me to play at graduation? We would be privileged to have you play at graduation, Dr. Hayes said. But that's not all. Professor Chen and I have been discussing the creation of a new program to support student musicians who want to share their talents with the campus community. We're calling it the Sarah Martinez Music Fellowship. Dr. Chen stepped forward with excitement in his eyes. Sarah, this fellowship would provide financial support for student musicians, as well as opportunities to perform at university, events, and in the community. You would be our first recipient, and you would help us establish the program for future students. Sarah could not believe what she was hearing. Less than 24 hours ago, she had been threatened with disciplinary action for playing music on campus. Now the university president was offering her a fellowship and asking her to perform at graduation. There's one more thing, Dr. Hayes said with a smile. We've been receiving calls from recording studios and music producers who saw your video online. It seems that your defiant performance has caught the attention of people in the music industry.